welcome back to Cuckoo for Books. My name is Salva, and today I'm going to be sharing some of my favorite fairy tale retellings that aren't Beauty and the Beast and that I feel are really underrated. It almost feels like every author is writing a fairy tale retelling, so I decided to give a shout out to some of the ones that I feel aren't being talked about enough, either because they were published a really long time ago or they're just really underrated for some reason. The idea for this video came about when a fellow booktuber on Twitter, Mayana, tweeted that she would love to see more YA fairy tale retellings that aren't Beauty and the Beast. And I was like, I've read my share of fairy tale retellings, so why don't I make a list for those who want to read books that aren't always about Beauty and the Beast. That being said, Beauty and the Beast is still my #1 squeeze. Just to keep it in my heart, the rose is right behind me. Because 7 is my lucky number, I'm going to list 7 of them. Coming in at number 7 would be Geek Charming by Robin Palmer. I loved Robin Palmer when I was in high school. This was made into a Disney Channel movie. It's an okay movie, but I feel like the original story had a lot more charm and warmth to it. It's a retelling of the Frog Prince in today's time. Popular girl decides to make over geeky guy, and of course they fall in love. I really love the way Robin Palmer writes. Her other modern fairy tale retelling was Cinderella, which I love just as much. I do not know which one of them I should choose. Her way of writing is so humorous. It's got that early 2000 chick lit sassy. You remember when all those rom-com books came out? Like, she is like the epitome of early 2000s YA, and I love it. It's humorous, it's charming, it's sweet at the same time. Yes, it's cliche, but in the way rom-coms are cliche, you're not looking for anything more than a cliche in a rom-com, right? You just want the couple to get together and live happily ever after. Coming in at number 6 would be Strands of Bronze and Gold by Jane Nickerson. And Jane Nickerson writes gothic fantasy fairy tale retelling. I don't know what you call the genre, but she does it dang well. And this is a retelling of the Bluebeard fairy tale, which is one of my favorite fairy tales. Now, the reason this is ranked kind of on the back end of my list and not towards the front end of my list is that it has been a while since I've read this, and despite me having read this a lot more recently than other books on this list, I have forgotten a little bit of what's going on in this book. It's set in the Deep South. On the back it says Mississippi 1855, so it really got the gothic vibes to it. I mean, it's a Bluebeard fairy tale retelling. How do you expect me not to love it? Cheat sheet virgin, Bluebeard.
The guy who marries girls and then kills them and keeps them in a room, and then she marries a new one and says, don't look into that room, and then he goes, oh, I'm gonna look into that room, oh, shoot, dead people, and then she dies, and then that's Bluebeard.
Coming in at number 5 is Book of 1,000 Days by Shannon Hale. This was one of the very first, if not the first YA book I read. It's one of those books that because you read it at the start of your journey, it just leaves this huge imprint in your brain. It's probably been over 10 years since I read this, but I still remember loving it, and I still remember the emotions I felt through it. This is a retelling of the fairy tale Maid Maylene. The general summary of the story is, gotta check, I mean, it's been 10 years, guys. So it's from the point of view of a lady in waiting named Dashti, or a Maid Maylene, and her boss lady doesn't want to be forced into a marriage. In punishment for her little rebellion, she and her maid Dashti are forced into a tower and are forced to live there for 1,000 days. So this is sort of Dashti's diary. And one thing I love about it, first of all, it's been 10 years since I've opened this book, guys, and I still remember she'll have like little drawings like you would in an actual diary, and it's written in diary form, like day 8, day blah blah blah. It's set in the area that is now supposed to be Mongolia. What I love about it is, I mean, you're gonna be trapped in the tower. How are you supposed to make a compelling story out of 2 girls who are trapped in a tower? She does. She writes it beautifully, and the story takes you somewhere you don't expect to go at all. This book also cemented her being one of my favorite authors growing up. I managed to meet her almost 2 years ago at a book signing, but because I was away at school when it happened, I had none of my Shannon Hale books, and I wasn't able to get them signed, and that broke my heart. I think I had her sign like a piece of paper, and I have a picture with her somewhere. Maybe I can put it in this. Oh, that'd be cute. Fairy tale retelling wise, Shannon Hale contributes her share to the publishing industry, but this would have to be my favorite, and so that is number 5 on my list. So coming in at number 4 is A Kiss in Time by Alex Flynn. Alex Flynn, if you know, is more famous for doing her Beastly series, like that book that was made into a movie with Vanessa Hudgens and Alex Pettyfer. It's a Sleeping Beauty retelling, and it begs the question of what happens if Sleeping Beauty was put to sleep back in the medieval era and she was woken up by a dude living today. How are you gonna introduce Sleeping Beauty to cell phones and how are you gonna bridge that cultural gap? It's from the point of view of both the guy, Jack, and Thalia, who is our Sleeping Beauty. It was published 2009. I remember getting this when it came out, so yeah, just about 10 years since I've read this. And it was one of the first books I remember reading that did references to other current YA books. So I remember when he did a Hogwarts reference, I was just blown away. Like, my little teenage mind was... I think it's a fresh take on it because you either do fully modern retellings or fully fantasy world retellings, and nobody ever thinks about what happens if you mix the two together. So that makes it such a fun ride and really one of my favorite fairy tale retellings. Coming in at number 3, and I just have to say, the top 3 were tough to place. I knew they belonged in the top 3, but I didn't know which would come in number 3, which would come in number 2, which would come in at number 1. But I think this is my decision, and I'm sticking to it. I think. Coming in at number 3 is Water Song by Susan Wayne, and it is a retelling of The Frog Prince. I don't know if people remember this, but maybe 7 to 8 years ago was when the last book was released. So it was in its heyday, probably 10 years ago. But 10 years ago, there was a series of Simon & Schuster called the Once Upon a Time series, and it was an anthology of fairy tale retellings. It could be told in the modern day, in a fairy tale world, in an alternate universe. Its task was to basically put together this collection of fairy tales, and I was obsessed with them. They all have illustrated covers like this. The more recent ones had real people on it, but the OG ones had these beautiful painted colors. I've reread this so many times. The love story in this novel is so dang pure and strong, and you feel it, and it's a standalone. And weird thing about all these books is they are standalones, and I'm in love with them. And me, I don't read standalones. I like my books like book 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, give me 10 books in a series, and at the end you're just rooting for them and you're crying and you want them to be happy. And I'm gonna tell you what it's about right now because I just realized I've been talking about this and not really saying what it's about. This book is a retelling of The Frog Prince, and it takes place in the First World War. Our princess isn't really a princess, but more of an aristocrat, and our prince is an American soldier who was injured during a mustard gas attack by the enemy. Somehow he drags his body to the estate where our princess, I'm checking, Emma, is hiding out because she's escaping the city to avoid the war. And she finds him and she nurses him back to health, and romance develops, but of course war gets in the way, and then you'll read all about that. And I love the setting, the imagery that the author evokes, and the picture she paints of wartime in Belgium. Gotta check my cheat sheet. I still remember, I'm getting all giddy because I remember the last scene in my mind perfectly, and I'm getting all the butterflies and the feels thinking about it. This one, I think, out of all the books on this list, might be the hardest to find, but oh man, it's worth it. I just love it so much. It was tough putting this at just number 3 because if I could have it my way, I would put this and the other 2 in a 3-way tie. Coming in at number 2, we've got our top 2 books left. If I could turn any book into a warm blanket and cuddle up to it, it would be this series, and it is Princess of the Midnight Ball by Jessica Day George. Can we appreciate how 2000s this cover is? It is a retelling of my favorite fairy tale of all time, 12 Dancing Princesses, and I love the 12 Dancing Princesses because I don't have any sisters, so it's always been wishful thinking for me. It's set in a fairy tale world, so it's not a retelling as much as it's an elaborate version of the fairy tale. Each night, what did they do? They dance. Why did they dance? We don't know. I'm not gonna tell you anything. I'm not gonna spoil this book for you. This is a 3-parter. So this one is based on the 12 Dancing Princesses, but we get— don't fall! The books are okay. The next one is a Cinderella retelling, and it's Princess of Glass. Same set of sisters, only not the eldest. I think this is one of the middle sisters, and she gets a Cinderella retelling. And then we get one from the youngest sister, Petunia. Right, your name's Petunia. Haha, it is. And it's called Princess of the Silver Wood, Red Riding Hood retelling. I think this was the Lunar Chronicles before the Lunar Chronicles were the Lunar Chronicles, because they managed to fit in 3 fairy tales in one series. And I would say out of all 3, my favorite would have to be Princess of Glass. There's a horseback riding scene in here that I remember. Again, have not read this in quite some time. It was the horseback riding scene here that I was just like, dang, I wish I were a fairy tale princess. Like, I don't know what was it about that scene, but it just made me go, oh. And now for my favorite fairy tale retelling. Drum roll, please. I can only drum with one hand because the other is holding the book. It is Dark Shimmer by Donna Jo Napoli. This is a fairy tale retelling of Snow White, but from the point of view of the evil queen. It takes place in about medieval Italy, medieval Venice to be exact. Donna Jo Napoli was one of, I think, the earliest YA fantasy writers out there. I've heard of her so many times, but strangely enough, this was the first book I ever read of hers, and it was published in 2015, so not too long ago. She weaves a very intriguing story. The tagline, it's pretty cliche, and it's once upon a time evil began in innocence, and there are so many villain origin stories out there in books, but this one has you convinced. Like the other ones, you're like, okay, so she became a villain because of that, wow wow wow, yeah right. Their motivations weren't really strong enough, but Donna Jo Napoli was able to create a character. You believe it when she starts being jealous of Snow White. You believe it. You support her almost. You're like, yeah, you're totally right. You do this. When she starts showing her evil ways, yeah, you get it. You get why she became like that. And my god, can she craft a story. Now I know why she's one of like the YA fantasy pioneers and one of the YA greats. And there's a part here that takes place from Snow White's point of view. And you forget that you're supposed to side with Snow White, because you're like, hey, not you, I want more of the evil queen. What I love about this book is it makes you sympathize with the villain without making the villain seem innocent. Like at the end of the day, her evil queen is guilty as all heck. You know how like Maleficent, like the Angelina Jolie movie, like made her seem really innocent. Like no, that's not the case with this. She's like a baddie through and through, but you feel for her, and in the ending, you're almost sad for her. It's just one heck of a book. If you're gonna read, well, no, I would like you to read all of these books, but if it really has to be one, then I would go for Dark Shimmer, because, you know what, just don't mind the cheesy title, Dark Shimmer. It was kind of cheesy, even I admit, but it was a debate. It was between either this or the 12 Dancing Princesses. That would be my number one, and I just thought, it's one of the books that you can't rank at number 2. It's gotta be number 1. Guys, it's the fairest of them all. Those are all the fairy tale retellings that y'all should read. You know I love me some Lunar Chronicles. You know I love me some ACOTAR. But if you want to give other books a chance, these books are really good. They won't let you down. And that about does it for my underrated fairy tale retellings video. You can follow me on my other bookish adventures on Twitter at Cuckoo for Books and on Instagram at Cuckoo for Books and at Salva Villarosa. Please subscribe, and I will see you guys very soon. Bye guys!